All right. Um, this is another public speaking video for the informative speech. The topic is informative speech and choosing a pattern for it. But two things before we start that. Well, actually, three things. Now, I keep sneezing through these videos, so I'm just going to gut through this, and if I sneeze, I'm just going to do the vampire thing. Second, I'm in front of my nerd shelf. Be judgmental here, but I swear below here is policy books. And by the way, I just did a run. And as always, the third thing, the COVID-19 recommendation. One of the things I notice is people with their cell phones out in the grocery stores. I saw a woman at Costco talking to her kid on FaceTime. Don't do that. Don't do that because if you do, just think about your cell phone. Think about all the stuff that you take out in public when you go to those grocery stores. The cell phone is the thing that you carry beyond the front door. You can come in and throw down your gloves and your mask at the door, your shoes, put clothes in hampers, change your clothes quickly, but the cell phone is the thing that people carry around with them as they're walking through the house. So you should treat it as something that you don't want to get contaminated, just like your face and your mouth and all that stuff. So when I go out to the grocery stores, right before I get suited up, I put the phone away and I don't take it out again until I get home. I know that sounds ridiculous. If you have to take it out while you're out, treat it as it is contaminated and don't put your regular hands on it, or treat it as it's contaminated and clean it when you get home. Alright? Alright, let's get started on the topic. Today's topic is, again, informative speeches and the pattern that you choose. Now, it's actually pretty easy because you've already done an informative speech. That special interest speech that you did already, the one that you talked about your future, your plans, that was a chronological pattern. Past, present, future, you already did it. You just had the additional requirement of adding culture and community in it, but besides that, you've already done an informative speech. So this next one is pretty easy, but this time you have to choose your topic and you have to choose the pattern that is. And there's the additional requirement of research on this speech. All those details are in the description for this thing. It's in your syllabus, and it is also on the assignment for this assignment. So let's get started on this whole informative thing. Now, we already had the midterm. The midterm, it was already covered in class, the different kinds of speech patterns. Now remember, the one speech pattern that you cannot use for this is problem solution. That is saved for your persuasion speech. But the other ones are all at the taking. Now, the reason why we're covering this topic is because it's part of the things that you have to decide before you even write out your outline. You're choosing your own topic. Now, there was other videos and discussions that you should have been working on that already. You have to figure out what kind of research you want to do. That was part of the other video and the discussion that you should have been already posting. And the thing is, you have to choose a pattern. Now, if you remember your patterns, there's the one that you already did, which is chronological, which is the easiest one to do. Now, you can't do past, present, and future unless the subject is completely different, but it is something that you can use. You can use other things. The example I always like to use is someone doing an informative on how to bake a cake. And, everyone's posting about sourdough starters and all that stuff on Twitter. I don't want to see any more bread posts. But the thing is, that would be chronological. And I already gave you examples of that in class when we introduced this during the lecture. So chronological is probably the easiest one to do. Another one that, the two that are a little bit harder to do, but the one that's most flexible is topical. Topical is in coordination with the speaker's wishes or their intention in their narrative. If someone, I sometimes put it in spatial, but someone who's doing a government speech and you're talking about the federal, state, and local levels, for example. or if they were talking about the importance and relevance of this subject to a person. The most important, the least important. Usually the most important is the last one, because this is the one you want to remind. So something that is not as important on the issue. So if you were doing a speech on someone's already taking climate change in one of the classes. So if someone was doing, I'll do one of the band speeches, cartels. If you're doing a cartel speech, what is affecting people in general, what is affecting people on a more regular basis when it comes to cartels, and then lastly, how cartels are affecting you in your own neighborhood, in your own country or your own state. See how that works? Importance. And that's the most important thing. Please, I kind of repeated the same word, look up the definition to remind yourself and have that with you when you look at it. Topical is the most flexible of the patterns. Then there's spatial. I put topical and spatial together in a way because spatial is probably the hardest of the patterns to use. That word is defined in your book. But it's easy for the audience to follow along because it's proximity to the speaker. I always use the example of someone planning a trip. When you arrive at the train station or you arrive at the airport and how you go from there. And the proximity of first place you visit, second place, and third place. The path you take. That's a classic example. It is that stuff. It is the hardest of the different patterns to do. But it is there for you, and it's easy for your audience to follow along if you follow directions of it. If you have questions on it, you can always ask me directly if you want to use that one. And then the last one to use is the one that is the most precarious for you. It has the chance of having problems, and that is cause and effect. Now, problem solution is safe for persuasion because when you give a solution, you're persuading someone to do something. Cause and effect is a problem. There's certain speeches that are banned because they're naturally confrontational and they're naturally put in persuasion. Abortion cannot be informative. Speech on President Trump. The police shootings. These are speeches that naturally cause conflict. And so save that for persuasion. If you use cause and effect, you have to remember you are not telling someone to believe in something. You're telling them this is something. So for example, with the COVID-19 response, and you want to talk about social distancing, you can talk about the different ways that how the first 2 points would be I'm getting lost in my train of thought. The first 2 points being the contamination vectors, the how we can contaminate each other, and then finally the last point would be getting COVID-19. So you're informing people of the reasons why we have this and the causes in the first 2 points, and the last one, the effects, if we don't go that way. Again, try not to be persuasive, just tell them that's what you're working on. The best way to do this is define your pattern, and don't do the outline, but just do 3 lines. And that line is your main point 1, main point 2, and main point 3. And then on just a keyword, and see which ones fit the pattern that you want, or which one look more like the pattern you see in the definition. If you write out the things you want to talk about in those 3 key words, and it looks chronological, there you go. If you write out those keywords and it looks spatial, topical, cause and effect, there you go. This is a great way to figure out your pattern. Don't just look at the patterns and think, okay, I need to then create a speech from them. I would recommend you find your speech first. Think of 3 ideas that you want to talk about and see what pattern fits that the best. Look at the definitions in your book, and this is your discussion for this week. Below, what you need to do, I need to stop making these videos after I run, but what you need to do is decide what your topic is. We've been doing that the last couple discussions, and then post what pattern you'll be using and give those 3 key words. Give a little description to it. Don't just say chronological, 3 keywords, and that's it. To get a little description. That way it's show that you kind of know what you're talking about there. And that way you choose your pattern, you choose your topic, you choose your pattern, and just give those 3 quick examples. I'm not asking you to write the outline. That's due next week. What I'm asking you to do is write your topic, write the pattern that you want to use, and give the 3 keywords and a little description on how that works. All right? Pretty easy. Make sure you do it. This does count for participation. Oh, and don't be judgmental.